My name is Liam. It's unsettling how a single choice, or a single moment, can pull the thread on everything assumed to be steady. For me, that moment lined up with my wife heading off to her younger sister's Bachelorette weekend. It sounds ordinary on the surface, but what took place around that trip ultimately cracked our marriage in two. And today, here's how it unfolded from the very start. Alyssa and I had been married for 2 years. We weren't brand new anymore, but we were still early enough that we were learning each other while building something we intended to last. Like any marriage, ours had highs and lows. We collected some beautiful memories, and for a long time, I experienced her as steady and reliable. We'd settled into a comfort where trust felt like bedrock. But even bedrock can hide hairline fractures, and those can begin almost invisibly before they widen. One of the early concerns back in our dating days was Alyssa's relationship with alcohol. It was never about volume. Even a single drink seemed to flip a switch. Everything shifted once alcohol entered her system. She recognized it too. We had more than a few talks after rough nights. There were apologies, promises, and tears. Eventually, she admitted alcohol didn't do her any favors, and we agreed that the best path was to avoid it altogether. It evolved into a silent, non-negotiable understanding between us, especially once we were married. After the wedding, life got quieter and more structured. The wild late nights, loud parties, and foggy mornings faded because we'd made a conscious decision to leave that behind. We wanted a family, so we made deliberate adjustments because we were actively trying to conceive. We were both committed to creating the healthiest environment possible for pregnancy. Alyssa wanted this as much as I did, so we kept to the plan we set. When, in our second year of marriage, Alyssa told me she was finally pregnant, about a month along, the feeling defies a simple sentence. It was the kind of announcement that lodges in memory with perfect detail. The words she chose, the look in her eyes, the way the room seemed to hold its breath. But just days after sharing the news, her younger sister invited her to a Bachelorette weekend in Miami. For clarity, her sister leans wild loud, spontaneous, unapologetically so. Naturally, I had doubts. A Bachelorette weekend with a group of women I'd only heard stories about and hadn't actually met wasn't reassuring. I felt uneasy, and I told Alyssa that plainly. I said, "Look, I won't be there to watch out for you. I know how these things can spiral. I know how your sister can be. I really don't feel good about this." I didn't think it was wise, especially now that she was newly pregnant. She was vulnerable, emotionally and physically, and I didn't want added risk. She reassured me, just the girls, a little fun. She promised to tell them she was pregnant and that she wouldn't be drinking. She told me not to worry and that she'd be fine. I took her at her word. There was no reason not to. So I helped her pack. I folded clothes while she debated shoes. I drove her to the airport, kissed her goodbye, and told her to enjoy herself, but be careful. Then I came home to a quiet house and tried not to let imagination spin. I stayed busy, anything that kept my hands moving, and stopped my thoughts from straying where they didn't need to go. At that point, I truly believed everything would be all right. When Alyssa got back 3 days later, I drove to pick her up. She walked out of arrivals looking a little worn, but smiling. She came up, kissed my cheek, and gave me a quick hug. On the drive home, she was extra chatty. She said it had been fun, that it was all party vibes and girls' nights out, and that the music, food, and energy were exactly what her sister needed to exhale before the wedding. She painted the trip like a harmless escape. Nothing but laughter, dancing, and sisterhood. I believed her. The way she carried herself after the trip reinforced that. I thought, okay, she handled it like she said. But in the days after, a quiet distance started to creep in, especially in the bedroom. I'd try to hold her at night, to be close, to initiate intimacy or just cuddle, and she would ease away or say she was tired. At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. She was pregnant. Maybe it was morning sickness, mood swings, or her body adjusting. Hormones can scramble energy and emotions. So when I asked, Is everything okay? And she answered, I'm just exhausted. I let it rest. I took her at face value because I didn't want to be the husband who assumes the worst when his wife says she's not at her best. About 2 weeks after she returned from Miami, by then we were both supposed to be getting ready for her sister's wedding that weekend. I came home from a quick grocery run when my phone buzzed. A message from an old friend, someone I trust enough not to ignore. He wrote, I saw the video. It didn't look good. I hope you're handling things well. I stared at the text for a good 30 seconds, baffled. What video? What was he talking about? Was that meant for someone else? I had no idea. I fired back. What video? What do you mean? He read it. Red receipt lit up, but nothing came through. So I called him. He picked up, and I could hear hesitation in his voice, apology in his tone before I even asked anything. He started, Bro, I didn't know you hadn't seen it. I'm so sorry. I swear I wouldn't have sent that if I knew. I cut in and told him to stop circling, just send me what he meant. He hesitated again, then said, All right, man. I'm sending it now. Brace yourself. Seconds later, the video arrived. It was short under a minute, but it felt endless. The footage was shaky and grainy, obviously a phone clip. Even with the low quality, I recognized Alyssa immediately. My wife wore a tight-fitting dress, clearly drunk loose in her posture, uninhibited in how she moved. She was kissing a shirtless man, probably a stripper or a bartender, while a cluster of women cheered in the background. Alyssa climbed onto his lap, wrapped her arms around his neck, and leaned in to whisper with her mouth almost on his skin. I don't know what she said, and I don't want to. I watched it 3 times in a row, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to make sure I wasn't missing context. Some angle, some sign that this wasn't what it looked like. But it was her, and she was clearly intoxicated. This was the same person who had looked me in the eye and promised to stay away from alcohol, especially now that she was pregnant. The same person who reassured me before the trip that it was just the girls, and she'd be responsible. Sitting on the couch, the first thought wasn't even betrayal, it was the baby. Alcohol, stress, reckless behavior. None of this aligned with someone who'd told me weeks earlier how ready she was to be a mother. I couldn't wrap my head around it. She had come home and acted like nothing at all had happened. Through the day, I said little and turned everything over in my mind. Her recent detachment began to make a tragic kind of sense. Later that night, digging around online turned up something worse. The damage wasn't only private. The clip had been posted publicly. One of the women at the party had uploaded it on social media. Maybe it was a joke, maybe clout chasing, or just ignorance. But it spread fast. A well-known manosphere content creator grabbed it and made a whole feature breaking it down, reacting to it, mocking the behavior, and warning men away from women who act like this. He didn't blur faces. That video had been circulating for at least a week before I even knew it existed. That night, I asked Alyssa to come into the living room. She walked in drying her hands on a towel, probably expecting something ordinary. I sat with elbows on my knees, eyes on the floor for a beat, then looked up. Is there anything? I asked. You need to tell me about Miami? Her face changed instantly, like she was flipping through a deck of possibilities. What do you mean? She said, voice defensive. In that second, I knew she wouldn't volunteer truth unless boxed in. So I took away the room to maneuver. I pulled out my phone, opened the clip, and handed it to her. Watch this, I said. She took it. I watched her face while it played. Her eyes widened. Panic rose. It's not what it looks like, she blurted, trying to give the phone back. It was a dare, she said, breathing fast. I didn't even know who that guy was. I was drunk. I held her gaze and said, Exactly. You were drunk after promising you wouldn't be. You're pregnant. You're married. And I'm looking at you grinding on a stranger in front of a room full of people. Do you hear how broken that is? I shook my head. Not knowing who he is makes it worse. Only God knows what else happened off camera. You think this is the whole story? This is probably just the slice someone felt safe posting. She broke down onto her knees, sobbing, grabbed my hand, and begged me to believe her. I didn't sleep with him. I swear to God, it was just a kiss, nothing more. Part of me wanted to believe, but the longer we talked, the more her story shifted. First, she said she didn't know him at all. Later, she slipped and said he was probably the bartender. Then she said one of the girls dared her to kiss him, never mentioning the lap part. It felt like her memory was fogged, or she was trying to scrub pieces for my sake. Each version sounded like patchwork, and even if she told the truth, I couldn't feel it. That night, I couldn't bear to lie beside her. I grabbed a pillow and blanket and slipped into the guest room without a word. Alyssa cried in our bedroom. I could hear the soft sobs through the wall, but I didn't go back. She came to the door, knocked gently, whispered apologies. Please, Liam, it was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. None of it quieted the storm. I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling and ran the same ugly questions in circles. Was this really the first time? Had it happened before, and I just never knew? And worst of all, I couldn't push away the thought that maybe what I saw was only the tip of the iceberg. I didn't know what followed when the camera wasn't rolling. That not knowing ate me alive. We never went to her sister's wedding. We didn't discuss it, but we both knew we couldn't show up and pretend. The idea of sitting at that event, making small talk with people who might already have seen the clip, was too much. I didn't want to go. Alyssa didn't argue. She knew what kind of storm she'd brought home. In the weeks that followed, we tried therapy. I wasn't optimistic, but I agreed, because some part of me wanted to believe there was something left we could salvage. Alyssa often cried through sessions, said she was ashamed, that she hated herself for breaking something good. I responded like a body in a chair nodding, answering, but emotionally checked out. I didn't feel attached to her anymore. Then another blow landed. Alyssa miscarried. We lost the baby. When the doctor confirmed it, she broke entirely. I didn't know how to react. It was painful, but I think I'd already been grieving long before. Grieving not only a pregnancy, but the marriage. The miscarriage felt like the last exhale of something already dying. After that, I didn't wait. I filed for divorce. I didn't care about money, assets, or anyone's commentary. I just needed out. That video haunted my eyelids whenever I shut them. I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't pretend we could ever rewind. My heart switched off, and once that happens, there's no switching it back. Years have passed since, and I still sometimes drift into what-ifs. I wonder whether things might have been different if Alyssa had simply said no to that trip. What if she'd stayed home? Would we have had the baby we were hoping for? Would the marriage have stayed strong? Those questions visit more often than I'd like. It's hard not to wander down those paths, but deep down, I know none of it changes reality. What's done is done, and I've learned to accept that. Sometimes letting go is the only way forward, even when it hurts. Before closing, a question. If this had been your situation, how would you have handled it? Would forgiveness have been possible, or would you have walked? Would you have tried to fix it, or was ending it the right call? Hearing your thoughts might help somebody else in a similar place. Thanks for taking the time to listen. If this gave you something to consider, or meant something, please hit like and share it with others. Sometimes sharing is the only way any of us feel less alone. Take care.